My name is Margaret. I am 60 years old. And 3 days ago, sigh, something happened that no mother should ever have to face. My own son tried to kill me. Ha! Even now, saying those words out loud feels unreal, like I'm talking about someone else's life, someone else's family, someone else's nightmare. But no, it was mine. He held my hand, looked into my eyes, smiled softly, not the smile a stranger gives you, not the smile of a criminal. No, the kind of smile only a child gives his mother. And then he walked me toward the edge of a cliff, step by step. Slow, careful, calm, as if nothing was wrong at all. Sigh, sometimes I still replay that moment in my head, trying to understand, trying to find the exact second when my son stopped being my son. But listen carefully, because that wasn't the moment my life truly broke. No, the real moment came later, when I learned the truth. A truth that had been sitting quietly inside my home for 25 years. A truth about my family, about my husband, about my children, and most terrifying of all, about the son I thought I knew. Ha! Funny, isn't it? You can live beside someone for decades. Eat dinner with them, celebrate birthdays, watch movies together, laugh together, cry together, and still never truly know who they are. Back then, before everything fell apart, I believed my life was simple, peaceful, safe. My husband George and I had been married for 40 years. 40 long years. Sigh, you build a whole world with someone in that amount of time. Habits, routines, memories, trust, especially trust. Our house wasn't big, but it felt warm, lived in, loved. Every morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window. The wooden floor creaked loudly whenever George walked across it, and every single year he promised to fix it. But he never did. Ha! Secretly, I think he loved that sound. George was a carpenter, a good one. His hands were rough from years of work, but gentle when it mattered. He could turn plain wood into something beautiful. Tables, shelves, chairs, even the bed we slept on. Everything inside our home carried pieces of him. Sometimes I'd wake up at night and hear him working in the garage, sandpaper scraping softly, tools moving, wood tapping against wood. That sound meant home to me. And me? I was a school teacher. Children filled my days. Laughter, questions, tiny footsteps running through hallways. I loved it. Children have a way of making life feel lighter, simpler. And when I came home, my own family was waiting. At least, that's what I believed. We had 2 sons, Daniel and Aaron. Daniel was the older one, full of life, the kind of person who made every room louder the moment he entered. He laughed easily, dreamed loudly, loved deeply. "Mom, one day I'm buying you a beach house," he used to joke. "A beach house?" I'd laugh. "With what money?" "With future money," he'd reply confidently. Ha! That boy always believed the future would be good. He used to kiss my forehead before leaving the house, even as an adult. "Don't wait up for me, Mom," he'd say. And every single time I waited anyway. Aaron was different, quiet, still, observant. While Daniel filled space, Aaron disappeared into it. He rarely talked about his feelings, rarely argued, rarely smiled loudly, but I never worried. Sigh? Maybe that was my first mistake. I thought silence meant peace. I thought quiet children were safe children. Every Sunday we sat together around the dinner table George built himself. Daniel talked constantly about work, about plans, about dreams. Aaron mostly listened, sometimes smiling quietly, sometimes staring into space. Back then, I thought we were happy. At night, George and I took slow walks around the neighborhood, the air cool, street lights glowing softly. We talked about growing old, grandchildren, retirement, travel, normal things, beautiful things. We believed we had time. People always think they have time. Then one night everything changed. Daniel didn't come home. At first it didn't seem strange. He stayed out late sometimes, but dinner became cold. The clock kept moving, and something inside me started to ache. 7 o'clock, 8, 9. By midnight, I knew something was wrong. Not because of logic, not because of evidence, because mothers know. George grabbed his jacket. "I'm going to look for him," he said. I remember standing in the doorway, watching him disappear into the darkness, and for some reason I suddenly felt cold. Neighbors joined the search. Flashlights moved through the trees. Voices echoed through the night. "Daniel! Daniel!" Sigh. I still hear those voices sometimes. Morning finally came, gray, heavy, silent, and then they found him at the bottom of a ravine. The police called it an accident, a fall. Simple. 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 There is nothing simple about losing a child. At the funeral, people hugged me, whispered prayers, held my hands, but everything sounded far away, like I was underwater. And Aaron? He stood there silently. No tears, no breakdown, no anger, just stillness. I remember looking at him and thinking, he's in shock. Sigh, I told myself that lie for years. After Daniel died, Aaron changed. He became attentive, helpful, protective. He visited more often, checked on me constantly, brought groceries, fixed things around the house. Sometimes he'd sit beside me quietly while I cried, never saying much, just staying there. And I thought, he's taking care of me. I had no idea what I was really seeing. Not love, not guilt, fear. Time passed. Years passed. The pain never disappeared. It simply became quieter, like an old scar. Eventually, Aaron got married, built his own life, started visiting less. George and I grew older, slower, more tired, but peaceful. Or so I believed. Then 6 months ago, something changed, and it started with a conversation about money. A very small conversation, one that should have meant nothing. But looking back now, that was the moment everything began. At the time, I thought my son was worried about our future. I had no idea he was already planning our deaths. It started quietly. That's the frightening thing about evil. It rarely arrives screaming. Most of the time, it enters your life smiling. 6 months ago, George and I were sitting in the kitchen after dinner. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The old clock on the wall ticked loudly. Tick, tick, tick. George stared into his coffee. "What happens when we're gone?" he asked suddenly. I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The house," he said. "Our savings, everything." Normal questions, questions older people ask. So we talked about wills, bank accounts, the future. We didn't tell anyone, not even family. But somehow Aaron found out. A few days later he came to visit, smiling, warm, carrying bags of groceries. "Thought I'd help out," he said. At first it felt sweet, comforting, then strange, then uncomfortable, then frightening. He started calling more often. Comforting. "You doing okay? Need anything? Did Dad take his medication?" Concerned, careful, attentive. Too attentive. One afternoon he sat at the kitchen table, tapping his fingers slowly. "You should organize your finances," he said casually. I looked up. "What do you mean?" Simplify things. Simplify. That word stayed with me. "You're getting older," he continued gently. "It's safer if one person manages everything." One person. Sigh. Something inside me tightened. George nodded thoughtfully. "It's not a bad idea." But I felt uneasy. Not because of what Aaron said, because of how he said it. Too smooth, too prepared. A week later, his wife started visiting more often, too. She smiled constantly, complimented the house, brought flowers, asked questions, lots of questions. "How much is the house worth? Have you updated the insurance? Do you still own the land near the lake?" Simple questions. But they didn't feel simple. One evening, I walked into the living room unexpectedly. Aaron and his wife stopped talking immediately, too quickly. The silence felt wrong. "Everything okay?" I asked. Aaron smiled instantly. "Of course, Mom." Ha! That smile. Perfect. Practiced. Cold. Later that night I stood in the hallway listening. They were whispering in the kitchen. I couldn't hear every word, only pieces. After everything transfers, need patience, can't wait forever. Sigh. A chill ran through me. The next morning Aaron sat beside George with paperwork spread across the table. "You should give me access to the accounts," he said. "It'll make emergencies easier." Access. Another word that suddenly felt dangerous. George hesitated. I watched Aaron carefully. His expression stayed calm, but his fingers tapped the table faster. Tap, 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 like impatience hidden beneath politeness. That night I couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but the house still felt heavy. I kept replaying conversations in my mind. Aaron's smile, his questions, his wife's eyes moving slowly around the house. And suddenly, for the first time in 25 years, I remembered Daniel. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. Daniel standing in the kitchen years ago, angry, arguing with Aaron. I had ignored it back then, told them both to calm down. But now, that memory felt different, sharper, darker. I turned toward George in bed. "Do you remember how Aaron acted before Daniel died?" I whispered. George went still, too still. The silence stretched, long, heavy. Then slowly he sat up, and in the dim light I saw something terrifying on his face. Guilt, deep, ancient, unhealed guilt. "There's something I never told you," he whispered. My heart started pounding. "What do you mean?" George looked away, like a man preparing to destroy his own life. Sigh. And maybe he was. That was the night I learned something horrifying. My husband had been hiding the truth about Daniel's death for 25 years, and once I heard it, I realized our family had never truly been safe. I sat there frozen, unable to breathe properly. George rubbed his hands together nervously, the same way he always did when something frightened him. "There's something I never told you," he repeated. My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" He swallowed hard. "The night Daniel died?" Then he stopped. Sigh. The silence felt unbearable. "George," I whispered, "tell me." He closed his eyes. Aaron wasn't in his room that night. Everything inside me froze. "What?" "He lied," George said softly. "I saw him leave the house." The room suddenly felt smaller, colder. "You followed him?" George nodded slowly. I had a bad feeling. Then, piece by piece, he told me everything. That night he followed Aaron to the ravine, and when he arrived, Daniel was already there, arguing. Not normal arguing. Not brotherly arguing. Screaming. Daniel held papers in his hand. "He found out Aaron was stealing money from us," George whispered. My stomach twisted. What? He had proof. Ha! Suddenly, memories started connecting in my mind. Missing money, confusing bank issues, Aaron offering explanations, things I ignored, things I trusted. George continued speaking quietly. "Daniel said he was going to tell us everything." I could almost hear Daniel's voice. Strong, angry, protective. He told Aaron it had to stop. George's voice cracked. "And then?" I whispered. George stared at the floor. Aaron pushed him. Silence. Complete silence. "No." "No." My mind refused to accept the words. "You're lying," I whispered. George looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I wish I was." Sigh. I felt something inside me breaking. "He pushed him hard," George continued. Daniel lost his balance. My breathing became shallow. He tried to hold on to the rocks. George stopped speaking. I already knew the rest. Ha! Mothers know. He fell, George whispered. I covered my mouth. Tears filled my eyes instantly. My son, my beautiful boy, gone because of his own brother. And you watched? I asked weakly. George looked destroyed. When I reached them, Aaron was crying, he said. He kept saying it was an accident. Accident. That word again. He begged me not to tell you, George continued. He said he panicked, said he didn't mean it. I stared at him in disbelief. And you believed him? George didn't answer immediately. Finally he whispered, he was my son. Sigh. That answer hurt more than anything, because I understood it and hated it. I was afraid, George admitted, afraid of losing both my sons. But you already had, I whispered. The room went silent. 25 years. 25 years I had cried for Daniel, prayed for Daniel, mourned an accident that was never an accident at all. And all that time, my husband knew. Ha! What does something like that do to a family? What does it do to a marriage? I suddenly remembered every strange thing Aaron ever did after Daniel died. The sudden kindness, the constant attention, the quiet guilt. It wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of the truth. And now he wants our money, I whispered. George nodded. And if Daniel stood in his way before, I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to, because we both understood we were in danger. Then suddenly the phone rang. Both of us jumped. George looked at the screen. Aaron. Sigh. A chill moved through my body. George answered carefully. Hey, Dad, Aaron said cheerfully. You and Mom should take a trip with us. A trip. To the mountains, he continued. It'll be relaxing. The mountains. Ha! The same kind of place where Daniel died. I looked at George. His face went pale. We'll think about it, he replied. After the call ended, neither of us spoke. Finally, I whispered, he's going to kill us. George closed his eyes. Yes! And at that moment we realized something terrifying. We couldn't simply refuse the trip, because if Aaron truly wanted us dead, he would only try another way. That night neither of us slept. The house felt different now. Every shadow darker, every creak louder, every silence heavier. I sat in the kitchen staring at old family photographs. Daniel smiling at 18, Aaron standing beside him quietly, George holding both boys when they were children. Ha! Looking at those pictures hurt now. When did it begin? When did Aaron become someone capable of murder? Or worse, was he always that person? George entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. His hands shook slightly. He's going to do it, I whispered. George sat beside me. Yes. No denial, no false comfort, just truth. Sigh, truth can feel colder than lies sometimes. What do we do? I asked. George stared at the table for a long time, then finally said, we need proof. Proof. A strange thing to need against your own child. If we refuse the trip, he'll become suspicious, George continued. And if we go to the police now, we have nothing. I hated that he was right. So what? I whispered. We walk into this? George nodded slowly. I'll record everything. He showed me his phone. I'll keep it recording the entire time. Sigh. The idea felt unreal, like we were preparing for war, not a family vacation. What if we don't survive? I asked quietly. George looked away. That silence answered everything. The next day, Aaron arrived smiling, his wife beside him carrying pastries. Thought we'd have lunch together, she said brightly. Brightly! Ha! People can say horrible things with beautiful smiles. Aaron hugged me, and for a split second I almost hugged him back normally. That terrified me, because even after everything, part of me still saw my little boy, the child who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the child who once cried because he accidentally stepped on a bird. Sigh, how does a child become this? During lunch, Aaron talked excitedly about the trip. The view is incredible, he said. Perfect for family photos. Photos. Again. That word kept returning. His wife laughed softly. We'll make memories. Memories. Huh. I suddenly wondered if Daniel's final moments were now living permanently inside Aaron's mind. Did he remember the push? The fall? The scream? Or had he buried it all beneath smiles and excuses? George remained unusually quiet through lunch, listening, watching. At one point, Aaron looked directly at him. You okay, Dad? George forced a smile. Just tired. Aaron nodded slowly, but his eyes lingered, watching, measuring, like he was checking whether we suspected something. That night, George packed carefully, not like someone preparing for a vacation, like someone preparing for survival, extra batteries, chargers, medical supplies. And quietly, he slipped the recording phone into his jacket pocket. I stood near the bedroom doorway watching him. We should call the police, I whispered. And say what? George asked sadly. That we think our son might kill us? Sigh. The terrible part was how impossible it sounded. Because evil inside families rarely looks obvious from the outside. Most monsters don't look like monsters. Most of them look like someone you love. The next morning I woke before sunrise. The house was silent. I walked slowly through every room, touching furniture, photographs, walls. A strange thought entered my mind. What if I never see this house again? My chest tightened instantly. I stood in Daniel's old room for a long time. Dust covered the shelves now, but some of his things remained. An old baseball glove, a framed photo, a faded jacket. Sigh, I suddenly felt him everywhere, and deep inside, I think part of me already knew. We were walking towards something terrible. When we finally heard Aaron's car pull into the driveway, I realized something horrifying. The trap had already begun, and now there was no turning back. The morning felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Even the birds outside sounded distant. I stood by the kitchen window, watching fog move slowly across the street. My coffee had gone cold hours earlier. George came downstairs dressed quietly, older than I had ever seen him. You ready? He asked softly. Ha! What kind of question was that? Ready to die? Ready to discover the truth? Ready to lose the last pieces of our family? No, I whispered. Then we heard the car, door slamming, footsteps approaching. Mom! Dad! Aaron called warmly. That voice. Sigh. The same voice that once called me after nightmares. The same voice that once said, Love you, Mom. Aaron smiled immediately. Natural. Relaxed. Nothing about him looked dangerous. And somehow, that was the most terrifying part. His wife stood beside him holding snacks and drinks. Road trip supplies, she laughed. Road trip, ha! Such harmless words. We loaded bags into the car. And that's when I noticed Aaron's backpack. Heavy, very heavy. When he lifted it into the trunk, I heard metal shifting inside. What's in there? I asked carefully. He smiled. Climbing gear, safety equipment, safety. Sigh, that word felt poisonous now. We locked the house. My hand stayed on the front door for several seconds. I looked at the windows, the garden, the mailbox George painted blue years ago. A strange ache filled my chest. Goodbye. The thought appeared suddenly and terrified me. We got into the car, Aaron driving, his wife beside him, George and I in the back. Soft music played quietly, an old song from years ago. Daniel used to sing along to it loudly, terribly, off-key every single time. Ha! For one dangerous second, I almost smiled at the memory. Then I looked at Aaron's reflection in the mirror and remembered. The city slowly disappeared behind us. Buildings became trees. Noise became silence. Rain clouds gathered above the mountains ahead. The higher we drove, the more isolated everything felt. Aaron talked casually the entire drive. "You'll love the view. We'll take amazing photos." Photos. Always photos. At one point, his wife turned around smiling. "You two deserve a peaceful trip after all these years." Peaceful. Huh. I wondered if she rehearsed these lines beforehand. George barely spoke. But I noticed his hand resting inside his jacket pocket, checking the phone, making sure it was still recording. The tension inside the car became unbearable. Every silence felt loaded, every glance suspicious. Then suddenly Aaron laughed. "Remember when Daniel got carsick on trips?" he asked. The air instantly changed. My chest tightened. George stared out the window, and Aaron smiled. Sigh, that moment chilled me deeply, because he spoke about Daniel so casually, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't murdered him. Rain began falling softly against the windows. The mountain roads became narrow, twisting, steep. Eventually, Aaron parked near a remote trail. "We're here," he announced. I stepped out slowly. Cold air hit my face immediately. Everything felt isolated. No nearby cars. No tourists. No voices. Only trees. Wind. And mountains. Ha! The mountains didn't feel peaceful. They felt hungry. Aaron grabbed his backpack. "Let's go," he said. And without hesitation, he started walking. We followed. Step by step. Further away from safety. Further away from everything familiar. And with every step, I felt one terrifying truth growing clearer. This trip was never about family. It was about ending us. The trail ahead looked beautiful, but hidden inside that beauty was the same darkness that killed Daniel 25 years earlier. And this time, we were walking directly toward it. The trail started gently, almost peaceful. Birds chirped somewhere high in the trees. Leaves moved softly in the wind. For a brief moment, I wondered if maybe we were wrong. Maybe fear had poisoned our minds. Maybe grief had twisted everything. Ha! That thought disappeared quickly. Aaron walked ahead confidently. Too confidently. Like someone who had walked this trail many times before, his wife followed close behind him. Every few minutes she turned around smiling. "Beautiful, isn't it?" "Yes," I replied softly. But inside, my stomach twisted harder with every step. George stayed beside me quietly, watching, listening, recording. The higher we climbed, the quieter the mountain became. No distant hikers, no laughter, no voices, just wind, and our footsteps. Crunch, 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 crunch. Eventually the trail narrowed. The trees thinned. And suddenly, I saw it. The drop. Far below us, jagged rocks disappeared into fog. My heart lurched instantly. "Careful here," Aaron said casually. Casually, as if death wasn't standing 2 feet away. Sigh. Everything about him felt different now. Not openly cruel. Worse. Calm. At one point, I slipped slightly on loose gravel. George grabbed my arm immediately. "You okay?" he whispered. "Yes," I lied, because I wasn't, not even close. My breathing had become uneven, not only from the climb, from fear, real fear. Aaron stopped near a rocky clearing. "There's a better view further up," he announced. His wife smiled. "Perfect photo spot." Photos. Again, the same word repeated like a warning. We continued climbing. Now the path became steeper, rocks loose beneath our feet. Clouds moved overhead. Dark. Heavy. Ha! Even the sky felt wrong. Then something strange happened. Aaron slowed down beside me. "Doing okay, Mom?" he asked gently. Gently. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And suddenly I saw flashes of the little boy he once was. The child who held my hand crossing streets. The child who cried when scared. The child who once brought me flowers from the garden. Sigh! For one dangerous second, I almost wanted to believe none of this was real. Then he smiled, and something inside that smile felt empty, cold. "We're almost there," he said. "Almost there." My heart started pounding harder. The final part of the trail was narrow and unstable, wind stronger now, the cliff edge dangerously close. George moved closer beside me. I noticed sweat running down his face despite the cold, not from exhaustion, fear. Then finally Aaron stopped. "We made it," he announced. I looked ahead and immediately felt my stomach drop. The cliff edge stretched wide and open before us. Nothing beyond it except fog and empty space. Sigh, my instinct screamed instantly. Danger. His wife pulled out her camera, smiling brightly. "This is perfect," she said. "Perfect." Aaron stepped closer. "Come on," he said warmly. "We'll take a family picture." Family. Ha, that word hurt now. George touched my hand gently. A silent signal. "Stay calm." Slowly, we stepped closer to the edge, too close. The wind pushed against my back, cold, sharp. I looked down accidentally. Instant regret. The drop below seemed endless. "Step back a little more," Aaron instructed. "Back," meaning closer to death. I hesitated. Then I noticed something. Aaron's breathing had changed, faster now. His jaw tight, hands tense, like someone preparing himself. His wife raised the camera. "Smile," she said. But nobody smiled. Sigh. The silence became unbearable. Then Aaron stepped forward. Quickly, suddenly. And in that exact moment I understood. No more pretending, no more confusion, no more doubt. My son was about to kill us. Everything slowed down in that moment. The wind, the silence, my heartbeat. And then Aaron's hands came toward us. Everything happened at once. Aaron lunged forward, fast, violent. Without hesitation, I felt his hands slam against my body. Then suddenly, there was nothing beneath my feet. Sigh. That moment lasted forever. The ground vanished. The sky twisted. The world lost shape. I heard George shouting, heard myself screaming. Wind exploded around us, cold, violent, unstoppable, and as I fell, memories flashed through my mind. Daniel laughing at the dinner table, George building our kitchen shelves, Christmas mornings, birthday candles, tiny hands holding mine. Ha! Funny what the mind chooses when it thinks you're about to die. Then impact. The pain was indescribable. My body smashed against rocks. Once, twice, again. Something cracked loudly. Maybe my arm, maybe my ribs. I couldn't tell. Pain exploded everywhere. Sharp, burning, crushing. Then silence. For one terrifying second, I truly believed I was dead. But then I heard a voice, weak, broken, familiar. Margaret, George, alive. I tried moving. Agony shot through my body instantly. "Don't move," George whispered painfully. I forced myself still. Then he whispered something that chilled me deeply. "Play dead. Play dead." At first I didn't understand. Then I heard voices above us. "Aaron." "Are they?" he asked breathlessly. His wife answered quietly, "They're not moving." Silence. Then Aaron exhaled slowly. "Good." Sigh. That single word confirmed everything. No accident, no panic, no regret, only intention. I kept my eyes barely closed, breathing shallow, motionless. Every second felt dangerous. "They're dead," Aaron said after a moment. "Dead." My own son believed he had killed me and sounded relieved. His wife spoke next. "It worked. Ha! That word hurt more than the fall itself, because it meant this had been planned carefully. "All we have to do now," she continued, "is tell the story. The story." "Yes," Aaron replied calmly. "We were taking photos. They slipped. Sigh. The same lie repeated again. Exactly like Daniel. My heart pounded violently, not only from pain, from horror. No one was supposed to find out anything, Aaron muttered. Anything. I knew what he meant. Daniel, the money, the truth. They moved around above us carefully, checking, watching. I stayed perfectly still, because deep inside, I knew something terrifying. If they realized we survived, they would come down and finish it. Eventually their footsteps faded. Their voices disappeared. Silence returned. Real silence this time. I waited several minutes before whispering, "George?" "I'm here. Weak. Painful. But alive. Alive." Ha! That word felt miraculous. "What do we do?" I whispered. George stayed silent for several seconds, because the truth was horrifyingly simple. We had survived the fall, but now we were trapped, broken, bleeding, alone. Alone, at the bottom of a cliff, and somehow I already knew. The worst part wasn't over yet. Aaron believed we were dead. But what we heard next would prove this wasn't only about money. It was about burying the truth forever. The silence after they left felt unnatural, heavy, endless. I lay against the cold rocks, barely breathing. Every inch of my body hurt. My arm throbbed violently. My ribs burned with every breath. And my legs, sigh, I could barely feel it at all. Above us the cliff towered impossibly high. No path. No easy escape, just stone, fog, pain. George groaned softly nearby. "I think my ribs are broken," he whispered. "I can't move my leg," I admitted. Fear settled over us completely then. Not fear of Aaron anymore. Fear of dying there alone. The air grew colder as clouds rolled overhead. Wind moved through the ravine, making strange sounds. Almost like whispers. Every little noise terrified me. A falling pebble, a snapping branch, even birds overhead, because every sound made me think he came back. Sigh, trauma changes every noise. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time stopped making sense. Then suddenly we heard voices above again. "Aaron, I think we should call now," he said. "Call." His wife answered calmly. "Tell them it was an accident." Accident. Again. "They slipped taking photos," Aaron continued. "We tried to help." Sigh, he sounded convincing. Practiced. That frightened me deeply, because it meant he had imagined this before, planned it, rehearsed it. Eventually their voices faded again. Then silence returned. George moved slightly beside me. Pain flashed across his face instantly. "We need help," he whispered. "How?" Neither of us had an answer. The cliff walls were too steep, our injuries too severe, and worse, by now Aaron was probably already telling people we were dead. The thought hit me hard. "They're going to bury us the same way they buried Daniel," I whispered. George closed his eyes painfully. Then suddenly he remembered something. The phone. My head turned slowly. "What?" "The recording." Hope flickered weakly inside me. With shaking hands, George reached into his jacket pocket. He winced in agony. For a horrible moment, I thought the phone might be broken. Then the screen lit up. Still recording. Sigh. Relief flooded through me instantly. "We have proof," George whispered. "Proof." For the first time since the fall, hope returned. Small, fragile, but real. Then suddenly we heard another sound. Different voices. Strangers. "Hello?" someone shouted above. My heart jumped. "Help!" I screamed weakly. George shouted louder. "Down here!" Voices erupted above us. "I see them. They're alive." Alive. Ha! Those words hit me like sunlight after darkness. Minutes later, rescuers appeared, climbing carefully down the rocks. "Stay still!" one shouted. "We're coming!" I started crying immediately, not softly, not politely, the kind of crying that comes when terror finally leaves the body. Hands reached us. Careful. Steady. Professional. You're safe now, a rescuer whispered. Safe. Sigh. For the first time in days, that word finally felt real. But deep inside, I knew something important. Surviving the fall was only the beginning, because now the truth was finally coming out. Aaron thought his plan had worked perfectly. He had no idea that the evidence destroying him was sitting quietly inside George's pocket. Everything after the rescue became a blur. Lights, voices, sirens, pain. Rescuers strapped us onto stretchers carefully. Every movement hurt. But I barely noticed anymore. Because one thought repeated endlessly inside my mind, we survived. Ha! I still couldn't fully believe it. As they lifted me upward, the cliff edge slowly came into view. The same edge Aaron pushed us from. Rain had started falling again. Soft. Cold. The mountain looked peaceful now, as if nothing terrible had happened there at all. Sigh, places keep secrets better than people. At the hospital, everything moved quickly. Doctors shouting, machines beeping, bright lights overhead. Stay awake. Can you hear me? What's your name? I answered weakly. Pain medication blurred time strangely. Minutes felt like hours. Eventually I woke in a quiet hospital room. A nurse stood beside me checking monitors. You're awake, she said gently. I tried speaking. My throat burned. My son, I whispered. It's okay, she said softly. You're safe. 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 No, not yet. I shook my head slowly. They pushed us. The nurse froze. What? My son, I whispered again. He tried to kill us. Silence filled the room. Moments later, police officers arrived. One sat beside my bed calmly. Notebook ready. Can you tell us what happened? He asked. Sigh. And finally, I told the truth. Everything. Daniel. The theft, the ravine, the push, the fall. Every word felt heavy, painful, necessary. When I finished, the officer stayed silent for several seconds. Then he asked quietly, Do you have evidence? George answered from the doorway, Yes. I turned slowly. He looked terrible, bruised, bandaged, weak, but alive, alive. Ha! Seeing him standing there almost broke me emotionally. George handed over the phone. The entire thing recorded, he whispered. The officers listened carefully. And as Aaron's voice filled the room, I watched their expressions change. Good. It worked. We'll tell them they slipped. Sigh, hearing those words again felt surreal, like listening to strangers, not family. When the recording ended, one officer slowly exhaled. We have enough, he said. Enough. That word felt final, not suspicion, not fear, truth. Later that evening, another officer returned. They've been arrested, he said. Arrested. My chest tightened instantly. Even after everything, part of me still struggled to accept it, because mothers are strange. Even when your child destroys you, a piece of your heart still remembers who they once were. What did Aaron say? I whispered. The officer hesitated. At first he denied everything. Of course. But after hearing the recording, he paused. He panicked. I closed my eyes. Ha! The same panic George described 25 years earlier. Nothing had changed. Then the officer added something else. His wife blamed him immediately. Sigh, of course she did. The perfect partnership collapsed the moment consequences arrived. They turned on each other fast, he continued. I stared quietly at the ceiling. After all those years, all those lies, all that pretending, it ended in a police station, not with power, not with victory, with fear. But even after the arrest, one painful question still remained. How had we failed to see the truth for so many years? Recovery took months. Bones heal slowly at our age. Trauma heals even slower. Some nights I still woke suddenly hearing the wind from that cliff, feeling the fall again. Sigh, fear stays inside the body long after danger disappears. George struggled too, though he rarely admitted it. Sometimes I'd find him sitting silently in Daniel's old room staring at nothing, lost. Ha! Guilt can age a person faster than time. Eventually the trial began. I didn't want to attend at first, but then I realized something. Daniel deserved truth. So we went. The courtroom felt cold, emotionless. Aaron sat there wearing a suit, looking smaller somehow, older, not dangerous, just empty. For several seconds he looked directly at me, and suddenly I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Not guilt, not sadness. Fear of consequences. Sigh. That realization hurt deeply, because even then he still wasn't sorry for what he did, only sorry he failed. The recording played during the trial. Every word echoed through the courtroom. It worked. They slipped. Good. People listened silently. And for the first time in 25 years, Daniel finally received justice. Aaron and his wife were both convicted. Attempted murder. Fraud. And eventually Daniel's death was officially reopened as homicide. Sigh. When the verdict was read, I expected relief. Instead, I felt grief. Because in that moment I realized something terrible. I had lost both my sons, one to death, and the other long before I even understood who he truly was. Weeks later, George and I finally returned home. The house felt quieter than ever, but different too. Not peaceful, not happy, honest. The lies were gone now. And strange as it sounds, truth changes the feeling of a home. One evening I sat alone at the kitchen table watching sunlight move across the floor, the same old floor George never fixed. Tick, tick, tick. The clock still sounded loud. Some things never change. George sat beside me quietly. I keep thinking about Daniel, I whispered. So do I, he admitted. Silence settled between us. Then I asked the question that had haunted me for months. Do you think there were signs? George stared ahead for a long time. Yes, he finally whispered, and deep inside I knew he was right. There are always signs, sometimes small, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes easy to ignore. Ha! Families become experts at ignoring uncomfortable truths, because truth threatens the image we build around the people we love, and love can blind us. Sigh. I think about that often now. About silence, about denial, about all the moments we explained away because we wanted peace. People ask me sometimes, how could something like this happen? And I always answer the same way. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts small, with little lies, with ignored feelings, with silence. And one day you realize the danger was sitting at your dinner table the entire time. Ha! If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's this. Listen to your instincts, especially when something feels wrong. Because sometimes the people closest to us are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. I lost Daniel 25 years ago, and Aaron, I lost him the moment I learned the truth. But somehow George and I survived, broken, changed, older, but alive, and maybe, for now, that has to be enough. Sometimes at night I still hear Daniel's laughter in my memories. Loud, warm, alive. And sometimes, I wonder if he spent 25 years waiting for us to finally uncover the truth. Sigh. Maybe now he can finally rest. Family is built on trust. But trust without truth becomes dangerous. Because lies inside a family don't disappear. They grow quietly, slowly, in darkness. And sometimes the scariest monsters are not hiding outside your home. Sometimes they're sitting beside you at the dinner table, smiling, waiting,